Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome and thank you for joining me on the late one, this beautiful 1st of the 7th, July. We ain't gonna lie. I want to thank you so much for coming on for this day, and we're just gonna go straight into it as we review some of the great news. Thank you for those who are going to be joining us on YouTube, on Instagram, and also on Facebook as well. And please feel free to join in with the discussion. And let us hear your views. Even if you're on Instagram, we can read it and I'll read it out. And on YouTube as well, please like and share, and also share the show with your friends. And please play a part in the process. And as ready, what we'll do, we'll just get straight in. D. Samuels, hello. And here we go. 1, all the way from the States. 2, we're missing someone out there. Hi guys, how are you doing?
Hey, we're good.
Hey, we're doing good, Sylbourne. How are you?
Fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've got Oneil Cross, who is all the way from the States, Virginia. Trump has allowed him to come out today, so we're going to see what's going to happen.
You mean Biden allowed me to come out today?
well, Trump, I see Trump going around the place, you know what I mean? So I don't know. Many people are saying that Trump is actually so much in the papers now than even Biden. And Anthony Francis, how are you doing, sir? Mr. Think It, Plan It, Do It Now.
I'm good, but I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
My picture looks frozen.
Oh no! You're moving, isn't it?
Oh, am I?
Yeah, you.
Okay, well, it's frozen on this side, so I'll just continue.
Okay, unless you want to. I mean, even if you reset yourself, and
that's fine. I'll continue.
So you're frozen. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I can just. It's just
you look fine.
David, can you see him, David?
I can see him. He's moving.
You're moving.
Well,
your face is moving. Everything is moving.
Okay, cool. Let's just carry on then.
Well, I like that. This is what we call think it, plan it, do it now. Because what you're seeing, action is taking place, whether or not we like it. Is that correct? Yes.
You said it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, guys, listen. I want to thank you so much for coming on, and it's a very packed week. Oneil is going to give us some perspective as to what is happening in the States. David, we're going to start off with how is it with COVID so far? I don't, David. I don't think that you're Mr. COVID, you know, but you know.
Let's hope not. You know, I don't want to be responsible for this whole worldwide pandemic that we're living through. But I think, you know, each and every time I come on, it's with a little bit of good news. And obviously, you know, that 19th of July in the UK is still on target. And you know, the numbers of people who are unfortunately passing away is still in the low figures. Yeah. So the vaccine is working a treat. It's lowering numbers of people who are falling foul of the disease itself. There was a misleading argument that half of people who had passed away had the vaccine, which is obviously completely wrong. The vaccine itself has been so effective at reducing the number of people who have passed away. And according to the BBC, around 27,000 people have been saved by using the vaccine in itself. So you can fact check me on BBC. It's on there for all its glory. But the fact is, you know, we're moving in the right direction. Holidays, green lists has been published. Amber list is obviously there. You know, Americans can travel to the UK if so deemed. You know, they're free to travel the world. And, you know, slowly but surely we're able to go to the places around the world as well. Caribbean's on there, certain countries in the Caribbean, Barbados, Cayman Islands, for example. And in Europe as well, we're able to travel to. So the vaccine passport, that's another thing that came into fruition this week for the EU member states. They've got their own passport. We've got our own kind of proof of vaccine status in the UK via the NHS app. And whilst it's not approved, our NHS app isn't approved across the whole of Europe. It is utilised in some European countries. Sorry. So you know, we are broaching the end part, the end game. You know, I like Marvel comics, so you know we are approaching the end game now, and I think that it's a testament to the hard work that we've put in thus far to try and get through this particular pandemic.
Do you think we're going to see Stan Lee make an appearance at some point?
You know, he may well give us a little bit of an appearance from the grave and say, look, you know, guys, Enjoy life, enjoy my comics, enjoy life, get back out there. The villain of COVID is being battled, and we are winning.
I want to go to Anthony. Yeah. I want to go to Anthony to see if can you see us, Anthony? Are you moving now?
Yeah, I seem to be back now. At least I'm now moving again, which is great.
Okay. Anthony, just picking up back from what David said, and then we'll go on to Oneil after. David mentioned about the vaccine, and I hear where Apple and many people are actually, it's sorry to say it like this, but it seems like it's a covert operation happening, making it into something which is going to be more like a reality. It's like it is putting people in a position whereby vaccine going to be like inevitable in order for things to happen, in order for things to move on, in order for step into the next level. Are we getting that?
Well, it's a slippery slope if organizations are able to determine what people can or cannot do. So, people have the right to not have the vaccine if they don't wish to have it. But I understand what you're saying, that there is this push recently with care home staff, where the government is saying they have to have the vaccine. And I'm pretty sure that, you go on cruises now and they're actually asking you for, your vaccine. I'm going to Wimbledon next week, and they want to ensure that I've got both my vaccine jabs. They want me to bring along my NHS app to prove I've had both jabs. So clearly there is going to be some sort of, for want of a better word, separation between those who do have the vaccine and those who don't, and how they're treated. So ultimately, I think, as David has said, a lot of people, a significant number of people have had the vaccine, but we don't want them to be disenfranchised because they have chosen not to have it.
According to what they're saying is that 90% of persons in the UK who are eligible to take it has gotten it already, and they're making a distinction between ethnic minorities. When I heard a doctor this afternoon, and then he was saying the Delta strain is coming, and it can come and get you. I don't know if what was that a fair comment? Was that a correct comment that I mentioned there, David? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the uptake within the, I know we've used this term here, but the BAME community, it's not as vigorous as those who are Caucasian, and so there's always this question about that discrepancy between the two, and susceptibility. Well, susceptibility really boils down to the fact that if you have comorbidities, and if you have comorbidities, you're more at risk. And quite obviously, if more people who are Caucasian take it, then people who are in the BAME community are going to be at greater risk if they've not taken the vaccine. But I agree with Anthony. This is a choice. I think all the information is out there for people to make that choice now. We can keep giving information to people, and that's fair and just. I think that's right. People who are not aware of the vaccine and are aware of the benefits as opposed to the risks of the vaccine, they need to be further educated in that regard. And I'm, as a proponent of medicine, I'm here to give that information, and I'm sure my colleagues are as well. But at the same time, people have to be able to make the choice of whether they want to take the vaccine or not. I've had both my vaccines. I feel it's a safe and effective method to try and reduce the spread of this particular condition. And yes, the Delta variant is there, and there will be other variants, but that's not to scaremonger people. That's to make sure that people are aware that this is how viruses work. They do change, they do move, and they try to sort of evade any host response, and the host being the human, and we're trying to knock and fight this virus off ourselves. So what I'm trying to say here is we have something that's safe and effective. It would be in people's best interest to take it to protect themselves, to protect their family, to stop the spread of infection. And if they do pick up the virus, because the vaccine is there to try and reduce the chance of you picking that up, but also it reduces the chance that you're going to succumb to it in the same, in a terrible manner that you may well do if you hadn't had the virus in itself. So what I mean by that is it'll save you the long COVID, it'll save you the symptoms, hopefully will save you the affordment of going in to see people in the NHS. And then obviously the one thing that we don't want is for people to go to ICU and pass away as well. So we know that the vaccine does protect against those things. It reduces the chance of those things coming to fruition. And so, the vaccine's there and it's free. You're not paying for this thing.
Yeah. Let me speak to Oneil. Oneil, you made some travels. I think out of all of us, you have made travels out of the States, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
I did. I went to Jamaica for 2 weeks. But even though I'm fully vaccinated, I've had my 2 jabs. Going to Jamaica, you have to 48 hours before you have to submit a negative COVID test, and then coming back into the U.S., everyone has to also provide a negative test before you come in 48 hours before. But when I was in Jamaica, obviously Jamaica had the curfew because I think one of the struggles, and I think David has mentioned it, is there's a lot of Jamaicans who are refusing to take the vaccine. And a lot of it, and this is just my opinion, is based on sort of incorrect information that is sort of proliferating there. So the government is trying their best to get folks with a lot of PSA. But when I was there for, I think, the Labor Day, I think it was, someone checked me on that, they shut the country down for 4 days because they didn't want anyone to sort of go party, if you will. But here in the U.S., I think the current administration was hoping for sort of a milestone, if you will, 300 million jabs, if you will, either first or second. We're going to be a little bit short of that, but I do believe you're seeing an uptick in folks who are taking the vaccine. And I've been trying to get folks to say, hey, take it. To David's point, right? It protects you, and if you get it, at least you're not sick and you're not going into the hospital. So I'm hoping there's a big push. I hope that some of our sort of public figures, athletes, especially in the Black community here, I think we have the lowest rate in taking the jab. I believe we're about 25%. And again, some of it is the mistrust between the Black community and the government. So hopefully we could push on and get over 300 million. But there's a lot of folks that will say, and David, you could correct me, that 300 million number is even higher, because if you then add in the folks who actually have had the COVID, they have the antibodies. But I think the argument that is made, even if you have the antibody, because of the variant, you should take the jab. So we're seeing more uptick here. So hopefully, we have more freedom in Virginia, where we are at. The mask mandate has been lifted. So yeah, it has. So the sign is, if you're fully vaccinated, no mask, no social distance.
Yes.
But you do have some sort of different entities that still require you to wear a mask. So I carry one in my pocket, because you never know which store you go in, and he's like, hey, you have to put the mask on, and I'm fine putting it on. So that's sort of where we at with it.
Yeah. Well. Anyway, I think people all mapped out regarding the whole thing. When you mentioned mask a while ago, is that people sometimes have the mask for a long time, and sometimes they don't have it washed. Isn't that, David? People always use.
Yeah, people are going to be aware of that. Obviously, changing mask is crucial. You can't be wearing this thing for the whole day, and especially not for days upon end. Especially when talking about the disposable mask here, particularly, they should be changed within a sort of a recommended window. So that will be on the box of the mask that comes with it. It'll tell you exactly how long that mask can be used for. I'll just touch on a very quick point that Oneil raised. I agree completely. Just because you've had, the people may well have had COVID-19 doesn't mean that exclusively you don't need to have a vaccine. Within a safe window of having had the COVID-19, you should be able to be eligible to have the vaccine in itself. And then there's some facts for you. 77.9 million people in the UK have had the vaccine, at least one dose. 49.3% have had double vaccines.
Yeah.
So I think that's fantastic. Nearly half the population have had double vaccines. That's fantastic. We are moving in the right direction. It's saving lives. Again, I keep coming back to it. 27,000 people's lives have been saved by taking this vaccine throughout the period of time that we've had it. And it's reported to have saved over 7.2 million infections as well. So, it's a win-win for me.
Fantastic. Well, anyway, as we quickly move on now, we'll touch on to the fact that the government is actually in the process of releasing and easing the lockdown June the 9th, July the 19th. And we just had Matt HANCOCK. Last week, we were just at that point where we're saying whether he's going to resign or not. I think, Anthony, I don't know if you're the one that sort of mapped out and set up the guy, because you already saw you saw the windows. You saw it.
Well, yeah, because I
You
speak
saw the video.
I speak the truth, and I set the camera to catch him doing what he was doing. I mean, look, it's to be honest, it couldn't come to a nicer guy, and to be honest, it probably came just at the right time, because he was actually beginning to drive most of the population completely balmy with his, the way he was talking, and just generally, his whole demeanor. But anyway, aside from my personal dislike of the guy, I think at the end of the day, I don't believe he's been a very effective health minister. Unfortunately, his private life is his private life, but if he doesn't stick by the rules, then he obviously had to fall on his sword. Initially, as usual, hopeless Boris wasn't going to sack him, so he had to wait for public opinion and the press to sort of press upon him that actually he had to do so. So I think at the end of the day, he did the right thing and left. And he, to be honest, a bit like the Cummins saga, it does show one law for the Conservative Party and certain people, and another for for the other people. So it's, in a way, it's don't do as I do, but do as I say type of mentality that comes from the government, sadly.
But when we talk about sacking, and when we talk about ministers being sacked, just because the prime minister didn't say "I sack you," wasn't it a sack? Wasn't the process whereby the prime minister is saying, "I've got confidence in my minister. I've got confidence in my minister." We don't always say that. And then somebody writes a letter and says, "Here's a letter," and then he goes back and says, "I'm going to spend time with my family." Or is it that people want to say you're sacked?
Well, I don't really. At the end of the day, I think whether or not he was sacked or whether or not he fell on his sword, he had to go. It was the right decision. It should have happened immediately that the information came out about him not following the guidelines that he's been pressing upon the public to do for the last how many months. And whether or not he was sacked or not, to be honest, is irrelevant. He obviously had to go. And I think and regarding his private life and what he's doing and who he's doing it with, that's irrelevant. It's just the fact that he wasn't following the same guidelines that he was asking everybody else to do. So for me, that's the main purpose of me having my criticisms of Matt Hancock and his sacking. So at the end of the day, I don't really care that Boris Johnson didn't actually officially sack him. The fact of the matter is he didn't follow the guidelines everybody else have been doing, and therefore he had to go.
Oneil, there's a level of standards which has dropped in the world to a certain extent, whereby the sanctity of marriage wasn't the key factor. It was the social distance that made a difference. The wife, he's married with 3 children. The lady's married with 3 children also. That wasn't the issue. I mean, do you think that standards has fallen, or is that a man's private life is no relevance to the public?
I think in the US, you'll see it's actually relevant. It's about the trust, right? Because I think the thinking is, if you're able to sort of do that in your private life, what would you do in your public life, right? So I don't know the details, and I don't know this gentleman, but it seems based on what Anthony's saying, he has one set of rules. And I think we've talked about this where, hey, you have to socialize with the people in your own home, and you've sort of pushed that on the public. And it's the same thing here, where we've had some of those rules that you see what's going on in Michigan and all the places, where there's one set of rules for, hey, do what as I say, but not what I do. So I think principle, I think, to what Anthony is saying, I don't know the details, but it seems to me it's a right move given he's a health minister. I could see if he was the transportation minister, it could be a different outcome. I don't know. But he's a health minister, and he's the one that is setting policies around the lockdown and gonna sort of, demonstrate this to the public. To me, it's a smack in the face. And I guess as you said, Sylbourne, I don't know if he got sacked or resigned or someone nudged him, but it seemed it was the right call.
David, is it standards has fallen, or it's a new way, or what?
I mean, I think that things are cyclical, aren't they? It's testament of the time that we're in. I think that the thing to get him on was the fact that he'd broken his own rules and advice in regards to PPE, in regards to PPE, in regards to not being in the same space as another person that's not in your household. So he broke his own golden rule there. And I don't know that, you know, an adulterous affair, whilst it is wrong, would have really been the thing to push him over the edge. I think that's the accountability there. If this wasn't if it wasn't COVID-19 that was going on, quite obviously, for me, I don't think he would have lost his job. It was because he's been speaking to the nation for many, for the past 18 months, giving them rules, giving them advice, telling them what they should do. And for some people, you know, they could see through what he was saying. In regards to PPE, for me, for example, I know that was a big issue, and that's probably why I misspoke there and said PPE, because PPE was a big issue right at the start, and he didn't admit that. And I think that for me was a really big thing for me, my mistrust and misgivings of the health secretary. But at the end of the day, this was the thing that got him, because, as I said, as a minister responsible for health in the UK, you can't say, you know, tell the nation you must abide by these rules and then break them yourself. And I think that's essentially what happened with him. But in the spirit of positivity, what I will say is I'm entrusting the new minister.
That's what I was going to come to now,
to basically push things forward and obviously take take an interest in obviously the health of the nation outside of COVID-19. Waiting list is going to be going up astronomically. How do we handle that particular crisis? You know, people and the staff that are working have been pressured hard in the NHS. Sorry for the mouthpiece here, but they've been working hard in the NHS. How you reward them valuably as well. So I think those are the big pressures that are concerning us at this moment in time. And I'm eager to see how Sajid Javid acts. And I'm positive that he will be able to act in a manner that will serve us all as a nation positively.
Anthony, before we move to this topic, Sajid Javid, safe pair of hands?
Well, I think you've just got somebody who's a sort of, how can I describe him? I wouldn't call him a safe pair of hands. I mean, because clearly he's had several jobs within the government, Home Secretary, and other sort of senior roles. So I think he's somebody who knows his way around the system. Safe pair of hands, probably to get us past this piece here. I think David is quite happy to have him as someone who knows his way around and can get the job done. But just going back to one piece that you mentioned, and I think Oneil and maybe David, we perhaps overlooked what you were trying to say, is that has the standard of politicians now slipped, whereby, you know, for example, over in the States, you've got Trump, or you had Trump making various statements about, you know, votes being rigged and all that sort of stuff, and in a sense demeaning the sort of electoral system. And you've got over here in years gone by, maybe the standard that we held senior politicians to, was that we wouldn't have accepted if we found out in their private life that actually they were having an adulterous affair, and that may have been a reason for them to actually resign. So I think maybe the standards that we hold people to, we're perhaps not wanting to throw stones in glass towers.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because nobody really came out very forcefully on that point. You could see very clearly where the chips lie, and it was simply on the fact that his ministry, most of his agenda was the social distance, and that was the core thing. And the fact that it was hand, face, space, and go to my place. That was his mantra.
I just want to mention on the standards, if we sort of go back in history, right? If you go back to Gary Hart, I think that was 1989. Someone need to check my facts. That was the first time in the US, as I remember it, you sort of took the personal life and sort of, you know, clash it together with your public life. Because if you go back and look at the 60s, and I'm not saying anything that I, you know, sort of condone it, I'm just look at from a media perspective. If you go back to the Kennedy, right, era, Marilyn Monroe and all those other stuff that was going on, that was not a media story. So you had Gary Hart, and then sort of the tipping point, right? And I think the media sort of shone a light on sort of the public and sort of the private, so they all got blended together. And I think the narrative has been, you know, if you're doing those things, as I mentioned before, in private, those things could bleed over into your public life. But I believe, and I could be totally wrong, that the media play a role in this, because a lot of times it's very selective. So for me, is that if you're going to do, you know, if you have this moral compass, do it across the board. Don't be selective, because to the point, I could bet someone leaked that video knowing sort of the end result of it, right? So, you know, someone, I think, you know, Sylbourne or Anthony mentioned it, he has said some things the public probably fed up, and someone like, look, we saw this video. This is the time to take him out, right? So those are the things that I look from a standards perspective. If you have integrity, whether you're a politician or not, that should bleed over. And I believe if you're doing things in your public life and your private life and they're the same, then that sort of mistrust you can't, because then it goes to the point that we were talking about, the standards of politicians, because they're held here, and we should always ensure that their words are trusted and they're not misleading the public.
Anthony, I want to move on, but I just want to pick back on your brain, because you have been very key in establishing projects and buildings and so like that. An office of that nature, should there be a camera in there?
Oh, that's a very mute point. And personally, I do know in organizations that for example, in call centers, there are cameras. Some organizations now have cameras on people's laptops, which allow them to, and not just cameras, but allow them to know what they're doing in terms of keys they're actually typing, and how long they're actually at their work unit. I think the thing with cameras is that it's I suppose the standard answer, sadly, I'm going to give you is that if you're in an office and you've got nothing to hide and you're in a public place, you shouldn't feel that you need to you need to worry about cameras. But if you've got one in a private office, which is where he had his camera turned against him, then I think that's actually privacy. That's tipped into a level of beyond privacy. I mean, he needs to have a certain level of privacy in his own private office. And so therefore, I don't think there should be a camera there. In public space, in an open forum environment, yes. In someone's private office, no.
David, was it a setup before we move on?
I think Oneil's answered that question without getting myself into hot water. What I will say is I agree with the camera issue, because what is worrying is if there are further cameras in that room, and I don't know whether there were, but if there are further cameras, then that information could potentially be leaked. And that's a government risk, or it's a risk to the government in that sense that, you've got confidential meetings, discussions that will be taking place. And I don't know if the camera's mic'd up, but the fact is you've got confidential client meetings that will be taking place, top covert meetings in the government building. You've got cameras that are pointing at doors, etc. That I just don't see the reason and rationale. And in the corridor, quite possibly, if needs be, but in the room itself, that kind of open itself up to scrutiny, and obviously you can dish that out. I think my broader concern is the way that it was leaked, and I think I mentioned that last week. I don't think you should have that kind of leak of information out in the press, the way that it was delivered.
Okay, fantastic. Anyway, football is coming home. Is that correct? Is that a fact? Oneil, you're in the States. Football is coming home?
I hope. When Raheem scored that first goal, I'm like, okay, let's go. I was rooting for UK to win the match, so I'm happy. So hopefully now, I think England is the favorite going through. So hopefully they could take it home. Okay, David.
Of course, England. Of course, it's coming home. It's here. We've been playing. England have been playing in the European Championships, basically at home. And it's been fantastic. It's the people, the press. It's all been positive news, and it's fantastic. The Jamaica, England have scored 3 goals in this championship. So yeah, Raheem Sterling, bringing it home for Team Jamaica. I mean, England. I keep making a mistake. It's fantastic that they're on the map. 3 goals, 3 games. And what a guy. I like that he's just going about his business quietly. I like that he's the doubters who are booing him taking the knee before the match are all applauding him when he scores the goals. I just think it's football at the end of the day, and football fans are the ficklest of fans. It's just fantastic. I think that he's able to take those accolades. And for him, we may well talk about this a bit later on, the press and the way that he may well not be glorified in the press, but for him, I'm sure personally, in his circles, and the way he moves around, his family, The team that are around him are all applauding him because they know that he's really brought his A game to all of the games, played exceptionally well. And, even if England do go out, which I hope they don't, I hope they prosper even more so than they currently are. He can hold his head high and say, look, he did the best for the team in all the games that he's played in. So I think it's fantastic. And again, hopefully, Jamaica. I mean, England score more goals in this.
Anthony, your take on the football match, and also let's take it further onto the media. Where Anthony? Oh, Anthony. Well, listen. Until Anthony comes back, he will come back shortly. I think you'll have some difficulty there. But listen, okay, he's coming back, and there is. We have to have the truth. We need the truth when we are talking about these things. We need the truth.
Yeah, I heard that last bit. I'll just give it to you. I'll give you the truth real quick. And the truth is this: if England do not win this tournament, then please, I do not want to hear the term world-class players or world-class team anymore. England have been so fortunate so far. They've been in a group where they literally have all they've had to do is fall out of bed to get to the next round. They've avoided Spain, Portugal. They've avoided Belgium. They've avoided all the big hitters, right? Now they're up against Ukraine. And after Ukraine, who have they got next? I don't even know who it is. So their path to the final is guaranteed. All they have to do now is play one in that final, in that one-off game, and hopefully they can actually win it. And I can stop hearing about 1966.
Well, that's well. Let's take the next one. Let's take it up. Because a lot of people are talking about the fact that Raheem Sterling was the one that scored the first goal that inspired a nation and inspired Kane. Kane scored the next goal, which didn't make a difference whether they scored it or not. England would have still won. But people are upset because the front page of the media, most of the media, is showing Harry Kane, and they're saying like it's a whitewash or blackwash. Some people say like a whitewashing out of or blackwashing out of Raheem Sterling. But somebody said a while ago, and I believe that as well. Raheem Sterling, I don't think matters about that. He just loves his game and he just loves his family. He just loves the money he's making and just enjoying it. Do you think
don't know Raheem Sterling, right? I don't know Raheem Sterling, but I do know he loves the sport that he plays and he wants to win titles. He wants to win football matches. And he has been chastised in the press before, and I'm sure he doesn't care about it one iota. I think we, as people who view the media and such, can sometimes be a bit annoyed by the way they portray certain folks, and I think it's wrong that they would do that. There's no parity in that regard. But in regards to the way that football matches, I think Raheem Sterling matters more to him whether he can win a Euro Championships and a World Cup or a Champions League or whatever it is than it does with what people say about him. He's got a beautiful family. He plays for a great team in Manchester City. I say that really difficultly. It's really difficult that coming off my lips as an Arsenal fan. But he plays for a great football team. He's got a great coach. He plays for England. He's scoring goals for Jamaica. Playing goals for Jamaica. And he's doing very well in the role that he's in. But I take the point that England have had it fairly easy, but to beat Germany is no mean feat. They're a great team. They have great players. Muller, Sane, great goalkeeper, great back four, and they beat them. But they did beat them in England at Wembley. Completely take that point. But you can only beat the team that's in front of you. And there are great teams that have already gone out. Portugal, France, the team of death, the group of death. All of them are all out. The Dutch are out as well. So teams have fallen in these championships to teams that you could say are not so much minnow teams, but teams that you shouldn't expect to have lost to. So you can only beat the team in front of you. England are doing very well. I'm very, very happy for Sterling. I want him to score boatloads more. I want him to have the greatest number of goals in these championships, and I want him to bring it home. Come on, England.
Okay, I thought it was Jamaica.
Yeah.
But Anthony, I'm sorry, I'm just going to labor on this point before because it is an issue. Do you think people are actually getting a bit over excited and missing the point at the same time, or do they have a point when they're saying that the media focus so much on Harry Kane and somehow the spotlight has moved away from Raheem Sterling?
Well, I've got to be honest. Actually, when the press reported the following day, it was noticeable that all of the major tabloids, apart from maybe one or two that I saw on my phone, did actually have the picture of Harry Kane and none of Raheem Sterling. And I think that was a clear, how can I put it? I think that was clearly done with the intention of having a white English captain on the front to hail the great English side. And I do believe that that was a bias towards Harry Kane because he was white rather than on Raheem Sterling because he was black. But I think, you know, maybe we're making too much of it, but I do think it was very noticeable that Raheem Sterling was missing from 80% of the front pages because Harry Kane's face was on there, which was a bit surprising considering that he has done nothing throughout the tournament. And the goal he scored, as David said, was really an afterthought. The game was already won then. So that's sad that we still have those types of media. And as we've already heard from our colleague from across the pond there, the media determine what the narrative is and what it is we're talking about the next day. And they decided to put Harry Kane's face on all those images and took off Raheem Sterling for their own reasons.
There's going to be a dilemma. There's going to be a dilemma when the goal scorer for the final is a Jamaican. I want to see what happens then when he brings it home.
Yeah. Well, listen, I just want to bring in this point here because I've got this beautiful image which I posted on my page today of Raheem Sterling, which is there. Lovely guy, lovely family, all the way from Jamaica, and doing great and fantastic things. My view is this, and I said it to many people. I said, we've got a certain power as individuals. If we're not happy what the media is doing, just put it on your page. Just share it. I keep saying we're the mainstream media, if anything. Oneil, what's your take on that? Because I think sometimes a lot of focus is on why the mainstream media is not doing this, why the mainstream media is not doing that, why they're not showing black families. But at the same time, we've got that power now, isn't it? To a certain extent.
You do. So I do agree with the sentiment that, you know, somehow there should be equal coverage, if you will. But then I thought about it and I went back to, I think it was 96 NBA finals. I think it was the Bulls. One of the finals was game 7. If you recall, Michael Jordan kicked the ball to Steve Kerr and he scored the winner, right? And the Bulls won the championship. And the question becomes, who is all over the papers? It was Michael Jordan.
Yes.
Michael Jordan was bigger than anything else. So I sort of look at it and say, could it be that Harry Kane is the captain? That could be one reason why he's such a focal point. But I haven't seen sort of Steve Kerr would also some part of the focal point as well. So I don't know if that's the lens that the media took to say, well, it's a Harry Kane team. You know, Sterling is part of the team, right? Or the media decide to say, in order for us to sell more ad dollars, Harry Kane is probably a bigger draw for us. Because the way I look at media, they want to make money, and there's someone in the back room to say, how do we monetize this, right? And someone is making that decision to say, is it a Harry Kane or a Sterling, right? Or both. And in the case of the finals, Michael Jordan was the bigger draw, right? Yes. So he sort of filled up all the newspaper and the media house. But I do agree that a lot of times we always say the media, but we all have this now. We all have our phone. We all have a new phone, right? It's not like 15 years ago where you depend on 2 or 3 media house, right? If you want to amplify Sterling, you could put it on your Facebook page. You could make a trend on Twitter, right? You remember Twitter, you can make a trend. So there are things that we could start collectively doing to make sure that the folks that we want to highlight is top of media. But I went back and looked at it and you know, I could see from both sides where it's Harry Kane's team, it's not a Sterling team, right? And that's sort of the vantage point that I look at it.
It reminds me, just for people, just for people that wouldn't take that reference, Steve Kerr is Caucasian, and obviously, Michael Jordan is black. So for people who didn't realize that reference. And the other thing I would, I completely agree, and that's probably why I've been tongue in cheek talking around about it. But Sterling is Jamaican, and so I've been saying that this for the past few moments now. So people resonate with that fact that he's culturally, and he is Jamaican. So he chose to elect to play for the English team, and that's fine. But people need to realize that people who are booing him at the same time and then cheering him need to realize that. I'm sure they do, but it's just so people are aware. And that's creating that not narrative, but not fake narrative, but a real, true narrative, and that people appreciate that fact.
I don't think.
Sylbourne, one second. I want to highlight something because David just sparked something in my memory. If you go back to the last Olympics, NBC, right? Remember, if you weren't an American, even if you came first, you didn't get interviewed, right? If you go back, right, they sort of took the second and third person and said, "Hey, how come you lost?" Right? And those are the things that the media kind of do because they control the narrative.
No, that's really true. That's really true. And it's very interesting about this whole thing. But as I said, my view is this, and I ask persons on Instagram, Facebook, or whatever, let's hear your views. Do you believe it was unfair? Or do you believe that the best way to deal with it is just to, as Oneil said, take your phone and just share it and just say, we are the media. We are the mainstream. What is it? We are the champion. What was it? We are the mainstream. If anything, Bill Cosby is free. Who is happy about that? There's a mute celebration.
Yeah, well, listen, Bill Cosby. Listen. Again, I'm gonna have to speak the truth on this one. Bill Cosby has been released, and I think he was released under the terms of the first hearing that I think was the plea bargain that he gave, that he would not be tried, or he would not spend any time in jail, should I say? I think my only issue here is, clearly there are two sides to the story here, and what we don't want to do is to minimize those women who came forward to say that they felt that Bill Cosby treated them in a particular way. But I think at the end of the day, we have to respect the law, and if they deem that he should be released, then we should respect that. And he's now been released under the terms. I mean, let's face it, in the States, as Oneil will probably tell us, if he had to serve his time, he would serve the time. But clearly, there was a wrong that's been put right, and I think we have to simply respect the law and let him now move on with his life.
I'll sort of amplify that, Anthony. So we have to separate. Obviously, there are victims out there that have made allegation, right? But in the principal law, and I actually read sort of the judge opinion, in what the judge said back when prosecutor, I think his name is Castor, when he looked at the case, he said he saw some holes in the case, and these were his words, I'm trying to paraphrase. And he said he did not think he could win the case in the court. So his thought process back then was that he wants to try to get some semblance of justice for the victim. So in a sense, he went civil. And in that civil case, that whole sort of arrangement was made that you cannot use that evidence to then future try Cosby on a future date. Well, that prosecutor then left. A new prosecutor came in and said, well, I don't agree with that terms. So I'm going to go and retry. I'm going to use that sort of, tape that you saw, deposition, if you will, in the civil case. I'm going to use it in this case.
Yeah.
And the Supreme Court ruled that, from a process perspective, we have to make sure our justice system, when a prosecutor make a commitment, or the state make a commitment and a prosecutor make that signature, you have to keep holy, because if not, the entire system will sort of fall apart. And I think that's one of the reasons that he's out yesterday, right? And you're going to have different sort of camps. You're going to have the Black community, because remember, we all grew up Mr. Huxtable, right? Everybody grew up with Bill Cosby. So we were all shocked when these allegations came out. And I think there's a camp that says he's being set up, right? But again, you have these women, and I don't know, but we have to believe that something happened, and whatever, sort of justice should happen should. But I think the courts ruled and said, from a process, a justice system, we cannot sort of, blow up the system and say, you know what, if Oneil make a deal, Anthony could come in after and say, hey, don't agree with Oneil, I'm going to go try this person, right? Then the system does not work at all. And I think that's why he's out. And if I, and I think I said this to Silver, if I was Cosby, somehow to sort of reclaim his image, he would go out and figure out how to create restitution for these women who was alleged their sexual assault, and then figure out how to move on. And I think he has to figure that out, and only him. But again, he released a statement, and he has said, because they sort of tried to plead this out before, and he said he would not take a plea deal because he did not believe he did anything, and he was willing to spend the 10 years in prison. So again, these are things that, and Anthony said it best. I don't know. I don't have the facts. I could only read what the courts stated, and he was let out. But I do believe the women, they should be believed, and whatever happened now after, it's only in Cosby hands.
David, what's your take on Bill Cosby, the whole saga, the recent release?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing much more to add. I think that Cosby has been quite fortunate, I think, because of the circumstances that have arisen because of the way that the court and the prosecutors, more specifically as Oneil has referred to, have decided to pursue this case. And when I say fortunate, because it doesn't seem there was going to be another way out for him, unless this kind of unwrangling didn't work. And I have to question what the prosecutors are up to, because this surely isn't something that is not known to them. This potential line of what has unfolded could unfold in the manner that it has, given the fact that they decided to renege on a deal, it sounds, there. So I have really firm questions about that, because at the end of the day, we can look at this and we can say, that he should be out or he shouldn't be out, but there are victims.
Yes.
I'm not going to speak specifically for this case, but there will be other cases where people have been victims for whatever that is, and this same thing could actually take place if prosecutors don't have all their cards in order. And the same thing could be said for defenses. It shows you how much trust we have in the law to carry out its duties efficiently and effectively, but sometimes that doesn't really materialize, unfortunately. So I think questions should be asked, inquiries should be had in regards to how that came to pass too, because at the end of the day, we do trust the law to make the right decisions when necessary in regards to convictions. And I think that's can you imagine if this occurred with George Floyd, for example? If in 2 years' time we find out there's some particular dealing that occurs, and we watch somebody die in front of us with a knee on their neck, and there's some technicality. I just think it's got to be a way that's really looked into. I go back though and say that for the same time I grew up with Bill Cosby. I won't say the reason I'm a doctor is because of watching Bill Cosby, but there's got to be some subliminal thought process that goes on there. Positive family on TV. Teaching of life stories, life events, how to raise children in testing times, and also the advent of comedy as well. So will I still watch the Cosby Show? Of course I will. I don't think that changes for me personally.
I'm glad that you brought up
because of the positive views.
I'm glad you brought that point up about watching the Cosby Show, because we're in this era now where they cancel things. I mean, Felicia Rashad tweeted it that she was happy or something like that, justice has been served or whatever, and now she's supposed to be a principal or the head of some institution, which they're coming at her. I think the question that I put out there, and we can close on this one, when it comes on to Bill Cosby was at one point talking about black boys and black men, with standards. Of course, one would say that there was a conflict of interest or a double standard. He was a hypocrite because he was, having these relationships with women. But I think the question is this, and Anthony, I'll put it to you guys. Watching the Bill Cosby Show, how do you separate the character from the individual, Because the Bill Cosby franchise, I love it. I remember growing up on it, and it was very inspiring as a boy growing up in Jamaica, you know what I'm saying? Do we cancel that out of our system, like how they're saying Michael Jackson, they shut down Michael Jackson because of those allegations? Yeah, please go.
Okay, well, just in closing, I'll keep it short so the other guys also have a chance to say their piece. Personally, I think that, the program should still be aired. I do find it somewhat. You can't. It's a bit like with the Windrush, not the Windrush, a bit like with the statue situation over here that we're having, where all of a sudden they want to get rid of statues. They want to try and take down this and take down that and rename this. You can't actually take away. You can't airbrush out history. What Bill Cosby did then in his programs, and as David said, in terms of inspiring other young black families or black men or black women, he did that then, and people did buy into that. What we're now finding out about in his private life, alleged, is something that really we can't hold against him in his creative aspect. So it's a bit like, the other day, I forget which actor it was. He was in one of the franchise. I think it's what's his name, Johnny Depp, and they've actually cast a complete new person to play his role because of the allegations that he hit his ex-wife.
Yeah.
To me, I think, why take him out of the film? I mean, he's done the first 3 or 2. Just let it carry on. But that's my opinion.
Yeah. Oneil, and then.
I think I agree with David. And if you look at it sort of.
Anthony just spoke a while ago. Or you want to?
Oh, sorry, Anthony. Sorry. If you look at sort of the lens, a lot of the front in the black community is coming here. They grew up on Michael Jackson. They're like, they took him out. Bill Cosby, same thing. But to Anthony's point, you have to separate the message, because at the core, we're still human beings. We all make mistakes, and when you make mistakes, you should pay the penalties for it. But that should not take away from your body of work that has inspired a generation. Because if you go back and you recall, and someone just checked my facts, Cosby was the only thing on television, right? Everything else was sort of, nothing looked like us. So it was inspiring for a generation to see a black family, right? A doctor and all the different things, and it was around, remember, the crack epidemic, right? So it was a hope. So for me, that's why I still like the show, because I remember used to watch it every night. You sit and you watch the Cosby Show.
Yes.
When it came on. So to me, we have to separate that, right? Because that's an inspiring story at the time it was being aired, because there was nothing else other than, I think, the Jeffersons were on, and there was one other show. Good times. But it was the Cosby that every person who was black aspired to. So to me, I'm going to continue watch it. And the other thing that's interesting about the Cosby Show is one of the few that he has rights to. As a black person, he has publishing rights to the entire thing, right? And if you go back and look at a lot of our black actors, they don't have publishing rights to their stuff. So when they go into syndication, they're not getting this residual income out of it. And Cosby has, for whatever reason. He had good lawyers around him. But I do believe we should still watch the show because it's still inspiring story. And at the time, that was sort of the beacon on the hill for a lot of our black families.
And definitely we need those role models. David, your last word?
I mean, again, this is the last word again, is that, the show's inspiring. From the Huxtables to the spin-off show, if you remember, was a different world.
Different stroke.
Hillman College. Yeah. So Hillman College, you think about the transition of, the characters to Hillman College, and you think, okay, well, actually, yes, black faces, talking about positivity within the black community. You've got to think also that this is more than just Bill Cosby in the show. His wife was a lawyer, his kids were in the show. The whole cast was a positive. I grew up rooting for Rudy Huxtable. That's, I grew up around that time, and I thought, oh, Rudy, that's, we were the same age, and anyway. So the point I'm trying to make here is it's a positive show, and positive images, and positive standards from a family point of view. I'm not in the cancel culture of that. And again, same thing with Michael Jackson. I have him playing in theatre, listening while I'm operating. So I have no problems listening to that too.
Well, fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining, and thank you, Anthony, Sir Francis, the truth, Oneil, coming all the way from the States, and Dr. Burton, as usual, keeping us in check, making sure that we all have our pressure, in place. My blood pressure is going on better now, David, as well. I'm doing my walk and talk.
Well done.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, listen, thank you so much for joining. And remember to tune into the show, like and share, and let somebody else know about the show. I'd wanted to play something about Anthony Francis, but I'll let that be next time. I think we've got to do a show with Anthony talking about Think It, Plan It, Do It Now another time, definitely. So without further ado, guys, I want to thank you so much and have a smashing and wonderful evening. Boom.